Before I read our gospel, I'm going to just give a very short introduction, and then we'll come back and I will read that section of scripture. Last Sunday, we talked about Jesus driving demons out of a possessed man. We talked about the evil that exists in our world today. So today, I'd like to switch things up and focus on how wonderful it is to be on the receiving end of the abundance of Christ. Our God does not hold back. He gives us the best, and He gives abundantly. And then we are to do likewise. But before we look closer at the scriptures, I'd like to share a cute story that I found. Years ago, when Johnny Carson was the host of The Tonight Show, he interviewed an 8-year-old boy. The young man was asked to appear because he had rescued 2 friends in a coal mine accident outside his hometown in West Virginia. As Johnny questioned the boy, it became apparent to him and to the audience that this young boy was a Christian. So Johnny asked him if he attended Sunday school. When the boy said he did, Johnny inquired, "What are you learning in Sunday school?" The boy replied, "Last week our lesson was about when Jesus went to a wedding and turned water into wine." Well, the audience burst out laughing. Johnny tried to keep a straight face, and then he said, "And what did you learn from that story?" The boy squirmed a little in his chair. He thought, and then he said, "If you're going to have a wedding, you make sure that you invite Jesus." I think the little boy was onto something. Now today we're going to back up a little bit in the order of Jesus performing miracles. In today's passage from John, we hear the familiar story of Jesus performing his first miracle at a wedding and turning water into wine. So let's read about this wedding and the first miracle of Jesus from the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. The wedding at Cana. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They don't have any wine." Jesus replied, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My time has not yet come." His mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby were 6 stone water jars used for the Jewish cleansing ritual, which each able to hold about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some from them and take it to the head waiter." And they did. The head waiter tasted the water that had become wine. He didn't know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The head waiter called the groom and said, "Everyone serves the good wine first. They bring out the second-rate wine only when the guests have been drinking freely. You kept the good wine until now." This was the first miraculous sign that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now at the wedding reception, there is great joy, but there is also a problem. Due to either poor planning or perhaps some wedding banquet crashers, there is a shortage of wine. Not only was that a social embarrassment, but in that culture, it was also a symbol. For a wedding to run out of wine was an omen that there was little chance of this particular marriage reaching its full potential. Maybe the bride and groom would not live happily ever after. So Mary approaches Jesus and says they have no more wine. And he responds, "Dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come." We heard that last week too. To help us understand this better, let's look at the scene in its historical context. The scripture begins on the third day. This is only the third day after Jesus had returned to Galilee. He had been baptized in the Jordan River and then went into the Judean desert for 40 days, where he was tempted by Satan. Now he has returned. The first thing he does on the first day is seek out John the Baptist, who was busy baptizing along the Jordan River. Right then and there, Jesus recruits his first two disciples who were followers of John. These were the disciples John and Andrew. That same afternoon, Andrew brings his brother Peter to Jesus. On the second day, Jesus finds Philip and Nathanael, and they all begin their journey to Cana to attend the wedding banquet. At some point during the banquet, all the wine is consumed. Now remember, the wedding banquets could last as long as a week. So during that week, the guests would be consuming lots of wine. We don't know how many days into the celebration that the wine runs out, but we know that Mary notices. Some scholars believe that perhaps Jesus and his family have some special relationship to the bride and groom, because Mary is watching over the festivities. Not only does she come to Jesus to tell him about the problem, but she also has authority over the servants, commanding them to do whatever he tells you. Mary is sensitive to the fact that not having enough wine for the guests would be more than an embarrassment to the host. She sees a need, and she goes to Jesus. However, she doesn't say, "You have to do something." She just makes him aware of the problem. And Jesus responds, "Dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come." To some, his reply might seem a bit harsh. It almost sounds like Jesus is saying, "Why are you asking me? I've only been home 3 days. I'm not the caterer. What do you want me to do about it?" His reply sounds harsher than it really was. Jesus calls his mother woman, which in Greek is a term of endearment, not a term of scolding or contempt, but one of great affection. The second part of his response, "My time has not yet come," is Jesus' way of saying that there is a plan for introducing his mission to the world, and it's not time yet for him to be performing these big public miracles. He needs time to recruit the rest of the disciples, time to lay the groundwork for what's to come, time to get people to listen to his message, not just be awestruck by a rabbi who can do miracles. We don't know if Mary knew what Jesus was going to do or not, but just the fact that she goes to him for help says that she trusts him to do what is right. She knows that he is not only her son, but also the Son of God. So she says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Like any good son, Jesus wants to honor his mother, so he considers her request. Up until now, Jesus has not performed any miracle. He's about 30 years old and just beginning to gather his disciples. He knows that if he performs a miracle, a clock will start ticking, and it will not stop until he gets to Calvary. Crowds will flock. Investigators will be dispatched. Is this the appropriate moment? He considers, and then he concludes that it is. Everything seems to be in place. So he makes his move and gives a few people a sign that he is different. He transforms water into wine. However, he keeps this miracle very low-key. It isn't meant for all of the guests to witness, only a few. When Jesus performs this miracle, three critical things are set into motion. First of all is the miracle. Jesus performs his first miracle. This is a crucial moment for both Jesus and the disciples. It was the custom to serve the best wine first and the lesser quality wine near the end of the celebration. But when the master of the banquet tastes Jesus' wine, he is amazed. The first wine was good, but this is so much better. Only the disciples, the servants, and Mary witness this miracle. Mary knows that Jesus is the Son of God and that he possesses divine power, that he is capable of performing miracles. And he does. He performs his first public miracle, and this is the beginning of his ministry. The second critical thing that is set into motion is that Jesus' glory is revealed. It's remarkable that Jesus chose to start his ministry in this way. Why? Because it is not one of the more flamboyant miracles. It was not the same scale as parting of the Red Sea and crushing the Egyptian army. It wasn't as verifiable as raising Lazarus from the dead. In no way was it as public as feeding of the 5,000. The servants, Mary, and the disciples are the only ones who know. Not only is Jesus' glory revealed, but his miracle tells these witnesses that the Messiah has arrived. Why not something grand and theatrical to get the ball rolling, to make the grand announcement, the Messiah is here? Because this miracle defines Jesus' ministry. It is not packed with persuasive power. Rather, it is driven by a humble act of service. Jesus chooses huge 30-gallon stone jars that held water for the ceremonial washing. Now, the wedding guests have all washed their hands and feet in these containers. These jugs basically have been used as bathtubs. Yet, Jesus, perhaps with a twinkle in his eye, tells the servants to refill these jugs with water. I hope they were washed out. We'll never know. But what we do know is the time for ritual cleansing has passed. The time for celebration has begun. Jesus turns 180 gallons of water from the bathtubs into the best wine, much more than is needed. Jesus' first miracle is one of tender mercy. His wine is mercy. His wine is forgiveness. His wine is grace. He demonstrates the generosity of a God who lavishes love and provision in abundance upon his children. Remarkable, isn't it? That his glory is revealed in such a simple act. It is a small gesture made all the more remarkable because of who the miracle worker is. The master of the banquet and all of the unknowing guests are being served so eloquently by the master of all things. As I said earlier, the turning of water into wine is the crucial moment, one in which three critical things are set into motion. First was the miracle. Second, Jesus' glory was revealed. And the third critical thing is for the disciples. Their faith has begun. Ask yourself, why did the disciples put their faith in Jesus? Is it simply witnessing the miracle? Remember, they've only been with him 2 or 3 days. They have seen no proof that he is anything other than a teacher, and they have only heard a small bit of his teaching. Is it the miracle that wins their devotion, or something else? It seems to me that the miracle is part of it, but not all of it. Something else is at work here. Think for a moment of the history of Israel. It had been a tribe and a nation for close to 2,000 years. Think of all of the things that Israel has been through. The beginning with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph and the hundreds of years of slavery in Egypt, Moses and the Exodus, wandering in the wilderness and giving of the law, Joshua and the conquest of the promised land, the years of tribal wars to gain possession of the land, the rise of the kings, Saul, David, Solomon, the work of the prophets, the civil war and division of their kingdom, the Babylonian captivity, the return from captivity and the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the Greeks colonizing Jewish homelands. The Jewish nation had been conquered and never regained its independence. It is into this world that Jesus comes. This is the world of Jesus' disciples. The Greeks have all but snuffed out the Jewish culture, and now their little region becomes part of Rome. I guess you could say that Israel's wine had run out. God seems to have abandoned Israel. The disciples, along with the nation, have lost hope. What do you do when your wine runs out? It happens in our own lives. Our wine runs out. Things seem fine. We're doing well, enjoying the first wine of the banquet. Then we run into hardship. Family problems, financial problems, job loss, health issues, depression, you name it. Our wine runs out. We become strangers to our former lifestyles, and we have nowhere to go. Several years ago, I began visiting homeless veterans who were taken off of the streets to a residential treatment facility in Union Grove. They were allowed to stay there for a maximum of 2 years while receiving treatment for things like PTSD, brain injuries, addictions. They needed vocational retraining, whatever they needed. During their stay and our visits, I would ask them what my women's group could help to do to make this transition become better. And their first answer was always the same: better meals. The facility fed them, but due to a lack of funding, they were served food of lesser quality, whatever was cheapest to buy and prepare. And the portion sizes were limited. The food was served cafeteria style. Kitchen workers would dole out 1 serving of each item on a tray, and usually there were no seconds. The veterans only had 30 minutes to eat, and then they had to leave the dining room. These veterans, like the Israelis, had nowhere to go. Their wine had run out. So my group of ladies began bringing special meals to the veterans' home. We would bring all home-cooked dishes like lasagna and beef roast, barbecued ribs, whole Thanksgiving meals, fresh fruits and vegetables instead of canned, and always freshly baked desserts. One of their favorites was our all-you-can-eat, build-your-own ice cream sundae bar. They loved that. Instead of the kitchen workers, we dished the plates ourselves with double-sized portions and always made enough for seconds and leftovers for supper. The veterans loved it when they knew we were coming. Not just because of the amount of food that we brought, but because we tried to bring the best we could. Name brands, high quality. One day, one of the men thanked me just enormously for serving him ranch and blue cheese dressing on his salad. To him, that was a very special treat because it was something that he had not eaten in a very long time. It was wonderful seeing how these men and women responded when they were given the best and in abundance. Giving in abundance sends a message to the receiver. You are worthy. You are valued. You are special. That's how Jesus gives with abundance. He always gives the most and the best. Then there is the other side of the coin. How often do we offer less than the best? I have been guilty of doing just that. Before I came to truly understand God's concept of extravagant generosity and giving in abundance, I used to go to the dollar store and buy items that I intended to donate. Or I'd go to the grocery store and get only the store brands or the less expensive items to take to the food pantry or donate to food drives. I was thinking more about how much it was costing me than the type of message that my donation was sending. I learned that when you give meagerly, it sends a message to the receiver. Now, I'm not talking about someone who has little to spare and can only give a small amount. Please hear me on this. I'm talking about people who can afford to give better, but choose not to. And that was me. What was the message? This is all you get. You don't deserve any more or any better. You are not worthy of a bigger or better gift. One of my previous pastor's pet peeves is going to a food table and seeing food cut into tiny little pieces and put on plates, offering someone 1/4 of a donut, 1/2 of a slice of summer sausage, or having fewer servings of food than the number of people wanting to eat. It bothers her because she says it doesn't show biblical hospitality. At my church, we discovered when the fellowship table was sparse, people were discouraged from staying for fellowship time. They saw that there wasn't much, and they didn't want to take any away from others, so they just left. So we tried another approach. We increased our food budget, and we began to model biblical hospitality, the generosity of God by offering full-sized everything. People could take a whole donut or two. They could have whole slices of summer sausage with crackers and cheese. We offered several choices, including sugar-free options. We put out fresh fruit, water bottles, baskets with snack bars, cookies, and chips. We even had bowls of candy and baskets of small toiletries in the restrooms. We announced that these items weren't just for the guests, they were for everyone. And what a difference that made. We noticed that people were not only coming to fellowship time, but they were actually sitting down, staying longer after the service, and visiting with one another. It truly became a fellowship time because they felt welcomed. They felt comfortable taking what they wanted because they were not going to be taking it from anyone else. There was plenty to go around. We were sending a new message. You are valuable. You deserve the best we can give you. And the message was received. Each week, our hospitality team was faithful to make sure that our wine did not run out. It is a sad truth that many of us don't come to God until we have a need. Jesus was not approached until it was an emergency. And we are sometimes the same way. We usually come when we have a need. For many people, religion is like calling 911. Mary came to Jesus when the wine jars were empty. Often, we wait to come until we are drained, exhausted, and when life's unpredictable demands bring us to the end of our rope or the bottom of our wine barrel. The disciples put their faith in Jesus not because of his miracle, but because the nation of Israel, the people of God, were ready. They were so more than ready. The nation's wine was gone. In Jesus, the disciples saw new wine, a new way, a new teaching. Who knows? Perhaps he is the long-awaited Jesus took a fisherman named Peter and transformed him into the great preacher of Christendom. He took a studious but quiet, insecure young clergyman named John Wesley and used him for one of the world's greatest revivals. He took a young, frail, and frightened girl named Teresa and transformed her into the Pulitzer Peace Prize winner we know as Mother Teresa. He takes that which is ordinary and transforms it. Just as there was no more wine than the wedding, just as there was more wine than the wedding guests could ever drink, there is more grace in God's heart than you and I can ever use up. We never have to worry about God saying, "Sorry, you're too late, jar's empty, I've run out." We don't need to limit the number of times that we return to God out of fear that we have used up our heavenly quota. God is not stingy. We get blessings piled up, pushed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Sometimes we tend to ladle out life carefully, to give carefully, to serve carefully, one teaspoonful at a time, out of fear that we won't have enough. God gives us blessings so great that we can't ever use them all. That's our God, our Abba Father, giving extravagantly and abundantly to his beloved children. Just as the wine Jesus made was the best, so life in him is better than life on our own. Don't wait until we have run out before turning to God. Go to God first. He is the best. He gives the best. He gives the most. You don't have to save the best until last. He's offering it to you right now through Jesus Christ. Praise be to God.